Hey, before anything else, can I ask you a quick favor? Your subscription is what keeps this channel alive. If you've ever felt something from this story or any of the others, or if this channel has ever made your day better, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps me way more than you can imagine. Now, let's get into the story. The veil felt too tight. Elena adjusted it for the third time, fingers trembling slightly as her reflection stared back at her with flawless makeup, a custom dress that hugged her like a promise, and eyes that looked too calm to be honest. Outside the bridal suite, laughter echoed. Glasses clinked. Her father's booming voice called out for the best man. The wedding was exactly what it was supposed to be. Elegant, tasteful, the union of two respected families, a guest list that read like a who's who of city elites, and a future carved out in champagne and expectation. Her fiancé, Marco, was everything her parents had dreamed of: successful, polite, handsome in a safe, practiced way. He kissed her hand when no one was watching, called her Bella, remembered to bring flowers every Thursday. He was a good man, reliable, predictable. But as the planner knocked gently on the door and told her it was time, Elena's stomach twisted. Not from nerves, from something deeper, something she couldn't name yet. She walked down the aisle to soft piano, the applause swelling as she approached Marco, who smiled like this was all a perfect dream. She smiled back. Her lips knew the shape of it. Her heart did not. Vows were exchanged. Hands were held. The kiss tasted like resolution, not passion. And then they were married. Elena Brenzi Moretti, wife. The reception began with applause and champagne and camera flashes. She moved through it like a trained dancer, greeting guests, laughing at jokes she barely heard, posing for photos beside a man she'd promised to love forever. And then the music started. The band, a quartet tucked in the far corner of the hall beneath cascading lights and white roses, began with a classic waltz. Elegant, safe. She turned to look. That's when she saw her. The violinist. Black suit. Sharp jaw. Long, dark hair tied back in a low knot that looked like it would unravel with a single touch. She played with her eyes closed, brow furrowed, lips parted like she was tasting each note. Her fingers moved like lightning, precise and sensual, coaxing a sound from the violin that didn't belong in this carefully curated world. It was raw, hungry, alive. Elena couldn't look away. The room blurred around her. The guests, the waiters, even Marco as he turned to clink glasses with his uncle. All of it faded into a dull hum beneath the sound of that violin. And those eyes. When the violinist looked up and met her gaze, it was as if the strings vibrated in her chest. A jolt. Elena felt heat rise to her throat. The woman held her gaze for a second too long, then dipped her chin in acknowledgement. Elena looked away, breath caught somewhere between guilt and something she wasn't ready to admit. You okay? Marco asked beside her, placing a gentle hand on her lower back. She nodded quickly. Yes. Just overwhelmed, I think. He smiled and kissed her temple. That's normal. It's the happiest day of your life. She nodded again, and the lie lodged itself somewhere beneath her ribs. The songs continued. Fast ones. Slow ones. One that made her aunt cry. One that made the children dance in a circle. But Elena kept turning her head toward the corner, kept finding the violinist's eyes drifting back to her between each song. During a break, as waiters cleared plates and speeches began, Elena found herself alone by the bar. She didn't remember walking there. She just needed a moment. A breath. And then she felt it, that unmistakable presence beside her. You're the bride, came a low, smooth voice. Elena turned and nearly dropped her glass. The violinist stood there, closer than she should be, holding a glass of water, sweat clinging to her collarbone. Yes, Elena said, her voice too soft. You played beautifully. The woman tilted her head. Thank you. I play differently when I notice someone listening. Elena flushed. I wasn't. You were, the woman said, smiling slightly. And it's fine. I was watching you, too. Silence stretched between them. Elena's heart thudded too loudly. I'm Daniela, the woman added, extending a hand. Elena shook it. The touch was electric. Elena. I know, Daniela said. I read the program. Another beat. Another moment suspended in something that didn't belong at a wedding. Congratulations, Daniela added, but her voice didn't sound congratulatory. It sounded curious. Maybe even a little sad. Thank you, Elena said automatically, the words brittle. Daniela sipped her water. You don't look happy. Excuse me? Elena stiffened. Daniela held her gaze. I play a lot of weddings. You'd be surprised how often the bride looks like she wants to run. Elena opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came. Daniela leaned in slightly. Don't worry. I won't tell anyone. Then she walked away. Back to the band. Back to the violin. Elena stood frozen, hands still tingling from that touch. The rest of the night passed like a blur. First dance. Cake. More speeches. But her eyes kept returning to the corner, and the woman who now played with even more fire, who closed her eyes and tilted her head back like every note was a secret she was telling only to her. And Elena listened to every single one. When it was time to leave, when the car was waiting and Marco was waving goodbye to the crowd, Elena turned once more. Daniela was watching her, violin in hand, not smiling, just watching. Elena hesitated. Then she looked away. She stepped into the car, into the new life, into the silence that followed the music. The hotel was beautiful. White marble floors, gold-trimmed elevators, staff that greeted them with soft smiles and rehearsed elegance. Elena walked through it all like a woman playing a role she hadn't memorized. Marco held her hand. They laughed in the car, took photos on the balcony overlooking the sea, clinked champagne glasses delivered to their suite by a bellboy too young to understand that love could sometimes look like silence. On the first night, Marco kissed her slowly, gently, the way a good man does. She kissed him back. Let him undress her. Let him touch skin she couldn't feel. Her eyes were closed, and still, behind her lids, all she saw was a woman with a violin. The next morning, Marco went for a swim. Elena stayed in bed, the sheets cool against her bare thighs, phone in hand, screen glowing as she typed, Violinist Daniela wedding, into the search bar like it was a confession. Nothing came up. She wasn't surprised. The kind of woman who played like that didn't need online presence. She existed in whispers, in glances, in memories that refused to fade. Elena closed the search, got dressed, smiled for breakfast. Marco booked excursions, boat rides, private dinners, couples massages. Elena agreed to everything. She laughed when she was supposed to, let him touch her waist in public, kissed him on the cheek during selfies. But inside, she was somewhere else, back at the wedding, at the bar, listening to a voice that had said, "You don't look happy." By the third night, Marco was asleep beside her, arm draped over her stomach like a promise she hadn't made. Elena stared at the ceiling, then slipped out of bed barefoot, walking to the balcony. The sea roared below. She exhaled slowly. And then, in a whisper that didn't belong to this life, she said the name out loud for the first time. Daniela. The sound of it made her ache. She didn't sleep. When they returned from the honeymoon, the apartment felt colder than she remembered. She unpacked in silence, hung up her dress, folded his suits. When she pulled her wedding shoes from the bag, a small, white envelope fell out. Her heart stilled. She picked it up, fingers trembling. No name, just the shape of her name inside, like it had waited. She opened it. One line, written in black ink. You look like music that night. No signature. No explanation. Elena sat down on the floor, breath caught in her throat. She read the words again, and again, and again. She should have thrown it away, should have burned it. But instead, she hid it inside a book on her nightstand. Marco didn't notice. He was busy with work, already scheduling meetings, calling vendors, planning weekend trips. One afternoon, he called from the office and said, "I've got a surprise for you. Next month. The gala. My firm's anniversary. I hired the same band from our wedding. Thought it would be a nice touch. Elena froze. The same band.
Yeah.
Same group. Pretty sure even the violinist is coming back. You liked the music, right? Yes, she whispered. I liked the music. After the call, she sat in the living room for over an hour, fingers gripping the edges of her chair. Then, for the first time, she pulled out her violin. The one she hadn't touched in 4 years. It was dusty. The strings were loose. But her hands remembered. Her heart remembered. She played until her fingers burned, until the neighbors banged on the walls, until the sound filled every part of her that had gone quiet. At the gala, she wore black. Sleek. Open-backed. Her hair down. Marco kissed her and said she looked stunning. She smiled and said thank you. They entered the ballroom together, applause already rising, champagne glasses clinking. Elena's eyes scanned the band. Piano, cello, a new flutist. And then there, Daniela, violin at her chin, bow in hand, dressed in black again, but this time with red lipstick. Her gaze swept the crowd.
And stopped.
On her, on Elena. That same slow recognition passed between them like a thread pulling tighter. Elena's pulse thundered. Daniela gave her a nod so small it could have been imagined. And then she played. The music was different tonight. Not safe. Not expected.
Wild.
Mournful. Beautiful. Elena stood frozen beside Marco, who chatted with his boss, oblivious to the storm building in her chest. At one point, Daniela stepped away from the group during a break. Elena followed. In the hallway near the restrooms, with marble walls and golden sconces, they stood facing each other like two halves of a song that had never been played. You came, Daniela said. I didn't know you'd be here. Neither did I, Elena said. Until a few days ago. Daniela's eyes flicked to her lips. Did you get my note? Yes. Did it make you remember? Elena stepped closer. It never left. Silence. And then, why are you still wearing the ring? Daniela asked. Elena looked down at her hand. The gold band shimmered like a lie in the low light. Because I haven't figured out how to take it off yet. Daniela nodded. When you're ready, you'll know. How did you know Because you looked at me like I was the first sound you'd ever heard. And you played like you already knew how I'd feel. I did, Daniela said. I felt it too. A voice called from the hall. Marco. Elena stepped back. Daniela didn't move. Go, she said softly. He's waiting. So are you, Elena whispered. Daniela's eyes darkened. Only difference is, I won't wait forever. Elena walked away, but her heart stayed behind. The days after the gala moved like shadows across polished floors. Elena went through the motions, breakfast with Marco, polite conversation, scheduling things she no longer cared about. But her mind wasn't in the room. It was in the hallway outside that ballroom, where a violinist had said, I won't wait forever, and looked at her like she already knew what she would choose. She dreamed about her, not in full scenes, just flashes. Fingers on strings, eyes locked through candlelight, a bow dragging across her skin instead of across a violin. Elena would wake up breathless, pulse racing, body aching in ways she hadn't felt since she was a teenager discovering her own touch for the first time. She didn't tell Marco. She couldn't. Every time he kissed her now, her mouth felt like a lie. Every smile she gave him tasted like borrowed air. She found herself wandering music stores again, touching sheet music, asking to hold bows. She bought a new set of strings, telling herself it was nothing, just a hobby, just nostalgia. But at night, when Marco was asleep, she would pull the curtains closed and play. Not the classics. Not the pretty pieces she once performed for applause. No, now she played low, aching melodies, broken harmonies, sounds that bled instead of pleased. One afternoon, she opened her mailbox and found another envelope. No stamp, no name, just a note. Private set, small bar. Friday night, come if you're brave enough. Her hands trembled. The address was written in looping, familiar script. Daniela. She hid the note in the back of her closet and stared at it for hours over the next few days. She told herself she wouldn't go. She had dinner plans, a husband, a life. But Friday came anyway, and by 9 p.m., she was already 3 blocks from the bar, heart pounding so loud she couldn't hear the city. It was a quiet place tucked between a bakery and a bookstore. No sign, just warm light and the sound of strings weaving through the air like perfume. Elena stepped inside. The room was dim. A few tables, a small stage, a single spotlight, and Daniela, alone, playing like the violin was her heartbeat. She wore black again, always black, but this time her hair was down, wild around her face, and her eyes lit up the second they landed on Elena.
She didn't stop playing.
Just shifted the melody, made it softer,
Deeper.
like a secret wrapped in sound. Elena sat at the back. She couldn't breathe,
Couldn't blink.
When the song ended, Daniela lowered the bow slowly and spoke into the mic. That one was for someone who came here tonight, even though she said she wouldn't. A few people chuckled. Love what you've seen so far and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories. Elena froze. Daniela's eyes didn't leave hers. Sometimes, she continued, we hear something once and spend our lives chasing it again. I hope she finds what she's looking for. She left the stage, walked straight to Elena, sat down across from her without asking. Neither of them said anything at first. The air between them vibrated. You came, Daniela said. I shouldn't have. But you did. I'm married. I know. I'm not like you. You don't know what I'm like. Elena swallowed hard. Why me? Daniela tilted her head. Because you're quiet on the outside, but everything inside you is screaming. Because you listen like no one ever has. Because when I play, you look at me like I'm not just sound, but meaning. This isn't real, Elena whispered. Then, why does it feel more real than the life you're living? Elena looked away. Her hands were shaking. Tell me to stop, Daniela said, voice low. Tell me to walk away, and I will. I won't write, won't show up. I'll disappear. Elena looked up, eyes wide. I don't want you to disappear. Daniela's jaw tightened. Then don't ask me to pretend this isn't happening. Elena stood abruptly. I need air. Daniela followed her out. The night was cool. The street nearly empty. They stood beneath a flickering lamppost, silence stretching between them like a string pulled too tight. I don't know how to do this, Elena said. I was raised to do everything right, to marry well, to behave, to be what they expect. And are you happy? Elena didn't answer. Do you love him? Daniela asked. He loves me, Elena said quietly. That's not the same. He's good. So our sunsets doesn't mean they're enough. Elena turned to her. What do you want from me? Daniela stepped closer. I want to play you a song you can't forget. I want to hold you in the dark and hear how you breathe when no one's watching. I want you to stop apologizing for feeling alive. The world tilted. Elena didn't move.
Couldn't.
And then Daniela kissed her. Soft at first. Testing. Waiting. Elena's breath hitched. Her hands rose without her permission. Fingers in Daniela's hair. Mouth parting. The kiss deepened. It was not polite. Not gentle. It was years of silence breaking in two. When they finally pulled apart, Elena's eyes were glassy. Her ring felt heavier than ever. This changes everything, she whispered. It already has, Daniela replied. Elena turned, walked away, didn't look back, but her body was still burning, and the sound of that kiss was louder than any vow she'd ever spoken. The cab ride home was silent. Elena sat with her hands clenched in her lap, lips still tingling, her pulse an erratic rhythm under her skin. She could still taste Daniela, red wine, and something darker. The driver asked twice if she was okay. She nodded both times. Lied both times. The lights of the city smeared across the window like paint, and every time she blinked, she saw Daniela's face. Heard her voice.
Tell me to stop.
She hadn't. And now she couldn't. Marco was asleep when she got home. Elena undressed in the dark, careful not to wake him. Every motion precise, calculated. Her body didn't feel like hers. Her lips didn't either. She lay in bed beside the man she'd married and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, she moved through the apartment like a ghost. Made coffee. Answered emails. Kissed Marco on the cheek when he left for work. And then she collapsed on the kitchen floor, back against the fridge, breathing like she'd just run a marathon through her own chest. The guilt came first. Sharp and immediate. She was a wife. She'd made vows. She had a life people envied. And she'd kissed a stranger in the street like it meant everything. But the guilt didn't last long. Desire overpowered it. Not just physical, though God, her skin hadn't stopped humming, but something deeper. Something that whispered this is who you are in a voice that didn't lie. She didn't text Daniela. Didn't call. Didn't go back to the bar. But she pulled out her violin. Every night. And played like she was trying to translate a language she didn't speak yet. The neighbors didn't complain this time. They listened. Elena could feel them through the walls, still and silent. Music was the only truth she could tell now. Marco noticed the change. "You've been distant," he said one evening, setting down his wine. "Work stress?" Elena nodded. "Maybe. You're not playing for anyone, are you?" he added with a smile. "Because you've been practicing again, like you've got a concert coming up." She smiled back. Said nothing. That weekend, at a dinner party with friends, she excused herself early and stepped outside for air. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One line. "I haven't forgotten how you tasted." Her knees nearly buckled. She typed back before she could stop herself. "This can't happen again." 3 dots appeared. Then stop dreaming about it. Elena didn't reply. Couldn't. Instead, she stood there for 10 full minutes, staring at her reflection in the dark window, trying to recognize the woman she was becoming. The next week, Marco surprised her with a weekend away. "Just us," he said. "You've been so tired. I thought we could reset. Like a fresh start." Elena smiled. Packed her things. Let him take her to a coastal hotel with white sheets and long walks and sunsets designed to look like hope. But the moment he kissed her in bed, her body betrayed her again. She kissed him back. Let him touch her. But her eyes stayed open this time. And the name that almost slipped from her lips wasn't his. She pulled away before it got too far. "Sorry," she whispered. "I'm just tired." Marco brushed her hair back. "It's okay. We're okay." But they weren't. And she knew it. Back in the city, she found herself walking past the bar again. Just once. Just to see. Daniela wasn't there. Or maybe she was. Elena didn't go in. She walked home instead. Played her violin until her fingers ached. Then, at 2 a.m., she opened her closet, pulled out the first note, and read it again. "You looked like music that night." And in that moment, she hated herself for needing those words. And wanted more of them anyway. The next morning, she found another envelope in her violin case. This one smelled faintly of jasmine. One line. "Meet me at the studio." No promises. Just music. No signature. Just a time. Midnight. She should have burned it. She should have told Marco. She should have run. But instead, she showed up. The studio was hidden behind a bookstore. Upstairs. No sign. Just a red door and soft light leaking from the edges. When she stepped inside, the world narrowed. Daniela was already playing. Nothing structured. Nothing rehearsed. Just raw emotion pulled from strings. She looked up, saw Elena, and didn't stop. Just motioned her forward. Elena walked slowly. Picked up the second violin resting on a chair. Their eyes met. No words. And then they played. Together. Perfectly. As if their souls had been tuned to the same frequency. The song wasn't beautiful. It was aching. Furious. Desperate. But it was theirs. When it ended, the silence hit like thunder. Daniela set her bow down. Walked to her. Stopped inches away. You're still wearing the ring, she said softly. Elena looked down, then back at her. I haven't figured out how to take it off. Daniela reached out, traced the edge of the band with one finger. Do you want me to help you? Elena didn't answer, just closed her eyes, and kissed her again. The kiss didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. Elena clutched Daniela's collar, her body pressing forward with a hunger she hadn't realized she was starving from. Daniela responded in kind, mouth firm, confident, tasting like promise and danger and something that had waited too long. The violin sat forgotten behind them as hands explored, pulled, tangled. Elena's ring clinked against Daniela's belt buckle, a sound that made her flinch, but she didn't stop.
Couldn't.
It wasn't just desire now. It was release, rebellion, revelation. When they finally pulled apart, Elena's breath was ragged, her hair a mess, her heart beating against her ribs like it wanted out. Daniela looked at her with that same quiet intensity. You came back, she said. I shouldn't have, Elena whispered. But you did. They stood there, suspended in something that didn't have a name. This won't stay hidden forever, Daniela added. I know. Then why risk it? Elena swallowed hard. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not pretending. That night, Elena didn't go home. She called Marco, said she was staying at her sister's place because of an early meeting the next day. He didn't question it. He trusted her. That was the cruelest part. Daniela made tea, played her something soft on the violin while Elena sat curled on the couch in a sweater that wasn't hers, her knees drawn to her chest, her soul buzzing with contradictions. Afterward, they didn't make love. They talked. For hours. About music. About fear. About the lives they lived in silence. Daniela told her about growing up playing in conservatories that wanted obedience, not passion. About falling in love with women who wanted her in secret but married men in the end. I stopped chasing, she said. Until you. Elena didn't know what to say. So she leaned forward and kissed her again. Slower this time. Not desperate. Just real. She left at dawn. Slipped back into her apartment with tired eyes and the scent of jasmine still clinging to her skin. Marco was making coffee. He kissed her cheek. Told her she looked beautiful. She wanted to scream. But she smiled. Said thank you. That was the beginning of the double life. The stolen hours. The careful lies. Work meetings that weren't meetings. Dinners that didn't happen. Texts sent in code. Music lessons that turned into something else. Daniela never pushed. Never asked for more than Elena could give. But every glance said, I'm waiting. And Elena gave more than she ever thought she would. One afternoon, Daniela sent her a recording. A piece she'd written. It's about you, she wrote. Elena listened to it on repeat, tears running down her face. It sounded like longing and guilt and beauty all tangled into one breathless confession. She played it on her own violin until she could match it perfectly. And then she played it in the dark, imagining Daniela's fingers on hers. The sex, when it finally happened, wasn't planned. Wasn't dressed in candles or music. It happened in the back room of the studio, between rehearsals after Elena had said something about how the silence between notes was the most honest part. Daniela had looked at her like she was already undressing her soul. The kiss came first. Then hands. Then clothes half off. Then mouths discovering places that had only known duty before. Elena came apart in pieces, gasping into Daniela's shoulder, gripping her like she was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world.
Afterward, she cried.
Daniela held her.
Didn't ask why.
Just let her be. I've never felt that before, Elena whispered. Not with anyone. You don't have to explain, Daniela said softly. I know. But explanations came anyway. From the mirror. From the ring. From Marco's eyes when he looked at her like she was still the same. From her mother's voice asking when the grandchildren would come. From friends who said she was glowing lately. What was her secret? The secret was that she was lying to everyone. Except herself. For the first time, she wasn't lying to herself at all. But truth has sharp edges. One evening, at dinner with Marco, He reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, "about kids, about the future. I want all of it with you." Elena blinked. The food tasted like ash in her mouth. I know it's soon," he added, "but I've never been more sure of anything." Elena's stomach twisted. She nodded, smiled, excused herself to the bathroom, and locked the door just to exhale. When she got home that night, she didn't call Daniela. She stared at her violin for 2 full hours. The next day, she sent a message. "I need to stop." Daniela replied, "Okay, if that's what you need." No fight, no guilt, just quiet. Elena didn't sleep, didn't eat, and after 3 days, she showed up at the studio again. Daniela didn't say anything, just looked at her. Elena walked to her, reached for her hand. "I don't need to stop," she whispered. "I need to stop lying." "Then stop," Daniela said. "But not just to me, to yourself."
To him.
To everyone. Elena looked down at her ring. "I don't know how." Daniela gently took her hand, slid the ring off her finger, set it on the table between them. "Start here." Elena stared at it, then at Daniela. And in that moment, she realized she wasn't afraid of losing the life she built. She was afraid of losing the one she was finally discovering. The ring stayed on the table. Elena didn't touch it, didn't ask for it back. She looked at it like it was a relic from another life, one that looked golden from a distance but turned her skin raw when worn too long. Daniela didn't push her, just reached for her violin and began to play something soft, unfinished, aching. Elena sat and listened, her hands still trembling from the choice she hadn't made out loud, but had already made in every breath, every glance, every night she had spent dreaming of a woman who wasn't her husband. That night, she didn't go home. She stayed in Daniela's bed, her back to the world, her body finally at peace. When morning came, she made coffee in silence while Daniela rehearsed in the next room, and it felt absurd how right it all was. There was no ceremony, no script, just mornings and music and a woman who knew how to look at her without asking her to be anyone but herself. But the outside world wasn't quiet. Marco called, left messages. "We need to talk. I've noticed things. You're not okay. We're not okay." Elena stared at her phone until the screen went black. She didn't answer. She wasn't ready.
Not yet.
But the silence became heavy. Her mother called next. "You missed the family brunch. Are you sick?" "I'm fine," Elena said. "Just busy." "Busy with what?" "Marco says you've been distant. We're just figuring things out." "You're married, Elena. This isn't a game." She hung up before she could say something cruel. That night, Daniela held her in the studio while thunder cracked outside. "They'll find out soon," Elena whispered. Daniela nodded. "Are you ready?" "No, but will you lie again?" Elena closed her eyes. "I don't think I can." The next day, she went home. The apartment smelled like rosemary and regret. Marco was there, sitting at the kitchen counter with a glass of wine and eyes that had already read the truth in her silence. "Is there someone else?" he asked without looking at her. Elena froze. "Marco, don't lie to me." Her voice broke. "Yes." Silence.
Heavy.
Shattering. "How long?" "A few weeks." "Do I know him?" A pause.
A breath.
"It's not a him." Marco looked up, and the hurt that filled his face wasn't just betrayal, it was confusion, history, everything they'd shared crashing at once. "So that's it," he asked. "You walk away from everything we built." "It wasn't built on truth," she whispered. "It was built on what I thought I had to be. And now I want to be someone who doesn't live in fear." He laughed, bitter. "I loved you." "I know," she said, and her voice cracked. "And I loved the idea of us. But I never knew what love could feel like until..." She couldn't finish. Marco stood, walked past her. "You didn't just cheat on me," he said. "You rewrote the story of our whole life." And he was right. She packed a bag that night.
Small.
Quiet. She didn't cry until the elevator closed. At Daniela's door, she didn't knock. just opened it,
Walked in.
and fell into her arms. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. That weekend, Elena played her first piece in front of a crowd since she was 23. Not a stage. Not a concert hall. Just a small room. A bar. Daniela by her side. The same song that had started it all, the one Daniela had written for her. When it ended, people clapped. But all Elena could see was the way Daniela looked at her like she was the only sound that mattered. Afterward, someone approached her. A woman. Sharp suit.
Clear voice.
I run a gallery, she said. We host live performances. Would you be interested in doing something more permanent? Elena blinked. You mean you belong in front of people? I can see it. Daniela smiled beside her. Elena said yes. Just like that, her new life began. One performance turned into two. Then weekly sets. Then small interviews. People began to ask about the woman with the violin and the new sound that filled rooms with longing. Elena didn't hide anymore. Not who she was. Not who she loved. But the world didn't stay quiet. One night, a woman approached her after a performance. Are you the one who left Marco Brenzi? Elena hesitated. Yes. The woman scoffed. You really gave up all that for her? Daniela stepped forward.
Come.
Controlled. She didn't give up anything. She chose something real. Elena held her hand.
Tight.
I'm not sorry, she said. Not anymore. But not everyone was kind. She received messages. Disgrace. You used him. You'll regret this. And some hurt.
Deeply.
But others came forward too. Quiet women. Married women. Women who whispered thank you after shows. Who said, I didn't know I was allowed to want more. Daniela's music grew louder. Richer. They started composing together. Writing pieces that told their story in notes and silence. Elena moved in with her. They bought new violins. Painted the walls of the studio. Hung lights that shimmered like stars. And every night they played. Until the past felt like a ghost they could finally let rest. One evening, after a performance that left the room in tears, Daniela looked at her differently. You look free, she said. Elena smiled. I am. Do you ever miss it?
What?
The life you had. Elena shook her head. It never belonged to me. But this. She touched her chest, then Daniela's heart. This does. Daniela leaned in, kissed her like the world was finally listening. And maybe it was. The gallery series was called Unspoken. Every Saturday night, Elena and Daniela filled a narrow, candlelit room with music that didn't ask for applause. It asked for surrender. People came in silence and left in tears. Some left with trembling smiles. Others with hands held tighter than before. No one left unchanged. Elena wore black. Always. Simple dresses. No jewelry. Hair pulled back. She stood beside Daniela with her violin in hand and a fire behind her eyes. They didn't speak during the performances. Not once. The only voices were their bows, their breath, the rhythm of two hearts speaking in a language older than words. After the shows, people sometimes approached. They'd say things like, that sounded like grief, or it made me remember someone I forgot, and Elena would nod, because it wasn't about recognition, it was about release. But not everyone came for healing. Some came for spectacle. One night, after a particularly raw set, a man in a suit stopped them outside. Marco sent his regards, he said with a crooked smile. Daniela's hand tightened around Elena's instinctively. The man handed her a card. Just thought you should know he's planning to tell his side. Magazine interview. National. You might want to prepare. Elena stared at the card for a long time after he left. Back at home, Daniela poured wine. You okay? Elena shook her head. I should have expected it. I humiliated him. Publicly.
No.
You told the truth. You left with honesty. I still broke something. Sometimes things have to break before they become real. The article came out 2 weeks later. The headline read, Left at the altar of love. Marco Brenzi breaks his silence. It wasn't cruel. Not exactly. But it was honest in a way that stung. He said he'd loved her, that he'd felt blindsided, that the betrayal wasn't just infidelity, it was erasure. She wasn't who I thought she was, he said. I never saw it coming. Elena read it alone. Then again. Then closed the laptop and sat in silence for over an hour. Daniela didn't ask questions. Just sat beside her, fingers grazing her wrist gently, waiting. He's not wrong, Elena whispered. I didn't just leave, I disappeared. You found yourself, Daniela said. That's different. But the article reopened old wounds. Family dinners turned tense. Her mother cried quietly into a napkin. Her sister asked if it was just a phase. Friends from before stopped answering texts. Others sent hollow messages like, hope you're happy now. And for the first time since leaving, Elena began to doubt. Not Daniela. Never Daniela. But herself. Her strength. Her right to rewrite the story. The studio became her sanctuary. There, she wasn't a villain or a symbol, just a musician. A woman in love. One night, Daniela found her crying over a broken string. Elena tried to laugh it off. It's stupid. I feel like I'm constantly breaking things. Daniela knelt in front of her. Then let's break the rest. Let it all fall. We'll rebuild with what's real. Elena clutched her. What if I can't hold it all? Then I'll hold it for you. They made love that night like it was an answer.
Fierce.
Slow. Elena cried into Daniela's mouth and didn't apologize. And afterward, as they lay tangled in the dark, Daniela whispered, You're stronger than they know. A week later, the gallery offered them a permanent residency. Their music was shifting the city. Elena said yes, not because she wanted to prove anything, but because she finally knew what she sounded like. Word spread. They were invited to play at a festival across the country. Elena hesitated. Traveling meant exposure. More eyes. More noise. But Daniela took her hand. The world already sees you. You might as well be seen on your terms. Elena nodded. They flew out together in spring. The venue was outdoors. Mountains behind the stage. Thousands of people gathered. Elena wore white this time. No symbolism. Just choice. Just light. They played a piece called Departure. Half composed, half improvised. It started with fear. Then doubt. Then a slow climb into defiance, desire, and finally, a note that lingered too long. Hope stretched into echo. The audience stood in silence. No clapping. Just breath held tight in reverence. Then the applause came. Roaring. Elena turned to Daniela and kissed her in front of all of them. Not performative. Not political. Just honest.
Raw.
And utterly hers. After the show, a young girl approached. Maybe 16. Big eyes. Nervous voice.
I saw your interview, she said.
The one you didn't give. Elena tilted her head. The girl blushed. I mean, Marco's article. And then I followed you. Your music. Your story. I just wanted to say thank you. You made me feel like I'm allowed to love who I love. Elena hugged her.
Tight.
You don't need permission, she whispered. Only truth. That night, in the hotel room, Elena looked out at the mountains and said, Do you think it'll ever stop? The judgment. The whispers. Daniela wrapped her arms around her from behind.
No.
But we'll play louder. Elena turned. Play louder. Daniela grinned. Always. Elena laughed for the first time in days.
Real. Full. Alive.
Let them hear us then. And so they did. The morning after the festival, Elena woke up tangled in white sheets and sunlight. Daniela was already up, playing softly on the balcony, the mountains behind her like an oil painting. The music was calm.
Still.
The kind of sound that fills the space without asking for it. Elena rose slowly, her limbs still sore in the best ways, her heart heavier in the strangest way. She stepped outside and kissed Daniela's shoulder. Good morning, she murmured. Daniela smiled, but didn't stop playing. You were talking in your sleep, she said. Was it a dream? More like a memory, Elena said. I was still at the wedding. Daniela lowered her violin. Are you still haunted by it? Not haunted, Elena whispered. just aware. They flew home that afternoon. The city felt smaller now, the apartment quieter. Their names were starting to appear in places Elena never imagined: blogs, playlists, interviews. She kept her distance from it all. Let Daniela read the reviews. Let the music be the only thing she paid attention to. But then one envelope changed everything. No return address. Just her name in a familiar script. Inside was a photo. Her and Daniela kissing at the festival. And a note. Does the gallery know who they're promoting? Her blood ran cold. She showed it to Daniela, whose face didn't change. It was only a matter of time, Daniela said. Someone doesn't want us to be seen. Marco? Elena asked. Possibly. Or someone he told. They went to the gallery the next day. The director was already waiting. We've received some letters, she said carefully. People suggesting we drop you. That your presence is too political. Too personal. Elena braced for it. The silence. The rejection. But instead, the woman continued, we've decided to increase your residency. If people are scared of your truth, that means it's working. Daniela grinned. Elena nearly cried. But not everyone was supportive. The studio window was broken one night. A brick thrown. No note this time, just silence loud enough to feel. Daniela installed cameras. Elena stayed up late, checking the footage every hour. She started looking over her shoulder. Started keeping her phone close, her bag closer. The fear returned, not for herself, but for Daniela, for the life they were building. I thought we were past this, she said one night. We're never past it, Daniela replied. We're just louder now. One afternoon, while Elena was alone rehearsing, a man showed up at the studio. Suit. Familiar face. Marco's older brother. I just want to talk, he said. Elena didn't answer. You've hurt a lot of people, he continued. My family. Your own. You may think this is about music and love, but you left a man bleeding in front of the world. And now you parade around like none of it matters. It does matter, Elena said, voice calm. Which is why I left. Because lying was worse. He still loves you. Then he loves a version of me that never existed. The man stepped closer. Too close. You'll regret this. Daniela arrived minutes later. Elena hadn't moved. She didn't speak of the encounter right away. Just held her tighter that night. Played louder that evening. And kissed her harder after every set. But the fear didn't leave. It crept in at the edges. The mailbox was vandalized. Their names scratched out. A gallery window cracked. The air thickened. Do we stop? Elena asked one night. No, Daniela said. We play louder. And so they did. The next show was their boldest yet. Full house. New composition. Elena walked on stage in red. The crowd quieted. The lights dimmed. She stepped to the mic, not to speak, but to look them in the eye. And then they played. The piece was called Ruin and Rise. It was violent at first. Chaotic. The sound of something collapsing. And then slowly, thread by thread, note by note, it lifted. Transformed. Became something that didn't just survive, it soared. At the end, there was silence. Then roaring applause. The kind that shakes your bones. And in that moment, Elena realized something. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were leading. And that came with danger. But it also came with power. Daniela kissed her on stage again. Cameras flashed. Articles followed. Opinion pieces. Praise. Outrage. Truth. One day, Elena's mother called. Her voice softer than before. I saw you on the news, she said. I thought I'd feel angry, but I just felt proud. Elena closed her eyes. Thank you. I still don't understand it all, but I see you now, and I miss you. They cried quietly on opposite ends of the phone, and for the first time since everything fell apart, Elena believed she might rebuild some of it. Not the same way, but stronger. Real. That night, Daniela played something new. Elena watched her. What is that? She asked. It doesn't have a name yet, Daniela replied. It sounds like hope. Then maybe that's what we call it. Daniela smiled. Hope, she repeated. Played louder. It started with a smell.
Smoke.
Not the sweet kind from candles or the burnt edge of incense Daniela sometimes lit while composing. No, this was sharp, fast, wrong. Elena woke up choking on it, coughing as the alarm blared and red blinked in every corner of the studio apartment they now called home. Daniela, she screamed, pushing off the sheets, feet already burning against the too-hot floor. Daniela was already at the door, barefoot, violin case in hand, the same instinctual grip she had when something was sacred. It's the gallery, she said between coughs. The fire's not here. It's down the block. Elena grabbed her coat, phone, keys. They ran. The gallery was 2 buildings away, and the flames licked the night sky like a beast finally let loose. Firefighters were shouting, hoses spraying, people screaming in the street. Someone pulled them back, told them it was unsafe, but all Elena could see was their name, unspoken, melting from the metal banner above the entrance as the fire swallowed it whole. No casualties, someone said. No one inside. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Their space. Their sanctuary.
Gone.
Arson, the investigators said. Targeted. Intentional. A message. And they got it. Loud and clear. The next morning, the photos were everywhere. 2 women holding each other in the glow of what used to be their stage. One headline read, "The price of visibility." Another, "Burning the music." Elena didn't cry. Not immediately. She just sat in silence, her fingers curled around Daniela's like an anchor. They were relocated temporarily. A friend offered a basement. Small, damp, but safe. They rehearsed by candlelight. Elena played like her bow was a weapon. Like every note was a scream. "Weary build," Daniela said. "Again," Elena replied. But the fear was different this time. Not just about them. About what their love represented. About how far hate was willing to go. Daniela kept saying, "We're not the ones who should be afraid," but Elena saw the tremble in her hands when she thought no one was watching. They didn't perform that week. Or the next. The messages poured in support, anger, offers of help, demands of silence. People online picked sides like this was a war. Elena unplugged for a while. Let Daniela be the public face. But even she grew quiet. Until the call came. A young girl. 17. Crying. "I was at the last show," she said. "You changed me. You made me feel like I could survive this too. Please don't stop." Daniela put the phone on speaker. They both listened. Said nothing. But when the call ended, Elena whispered, "Let's play." They contacted the gallery director. The one who'd believed in them when no one else did. "Let us do one last show," Daniela said. "Open air. In the ruins. Let them come. Let them see we're still here." The woman agreed. Quietly. Carefully. Word spread. Too fast. The city was divided. Protesters promised to show up. So did supporters. The gallery rebuilt a small wooden stage where the old one had burned. Police were hired for safety. Elena's mother sent a message. "I'll be in the front row." And then the night came.
Cold.
Windy. Electric. Hundreds gathered. Some with candles. Others with fists. Signs clashed. "Love wins" versus "This is not art." Daniela wore black. Elena wore red. No makeup. No masks. Just themselves. 2 women in love. In defiance. In music. They walked on stage. No words. No introductions. Just strings. The piece they played had no title. It was chaos and calm. Rage and grace. Pain unspoken turned into melody. When it ended, there was silence. Then a single clap. Then another. And then the sound of hundreds rising in one breathless ovation. But then, shouting. From the back. A bottle thrown. Glass shattered near the stage. Police stepped forward. The crowd shifted. Daniela grabbed Elena's hand. "Don't run," she whispered. "We don't run anymore." Elena didn't. She stood.
Steady.
And began to play again. No mic. No spotlight.
Just sound. Pure.
unstoppable. Daniela joined her. And the protest drowned. Not in violence, but in music. Because nothing is louder than truth when it's played without apology. After the crowd dispersed, after the cameras left, after the police cleared the space, they sat on the edge of the stage, hands still trembling. "We did it," Elena whispered. "We survived." Daniela leaned her head on her shoulder.
No.
"We lived." That night, back in their apartment, Elena opened her violin case and found a folded note she didn't recognize. No name, no threat, just 6 words that hit like thunder. "I was wrong. I see you."
She didn't have to ask.
She knew it was from Marco. And somehow, that was enough. The morning after the fire concert, the city felt different. Quieter somehow, like it was listening. Elena sat by the window, her violin on her lap, still cold from the night before. She watched the sky lighten, pink and silver curling across the buildings, and thought, we made it. Not through unscathed, not untouched, but alive.
Whole.
And not alone. Daniela came in behind her, coffee in hand, eyes softer than they'd been in weeks. "You didn't sleep," she said. "Did you?" Elena shook her head.
No.
"But I feel rested." Daniela set the mug down and leaned against the window, arms wrapping around her from behind. "You were magic last night." Elena tilted her head back against her shoulder. "We were." And they were. The performance had done more than defy hatred. It had transformed it. The gallery offered them a permanent outdoor installation, the Fire Stage, dedicated to artists who choose to speak louder than fear. Elena's mother donated the first sculpture, a twisted violin carved from the burnt wood of the gallery's original door. It stood behind the stage now, a symbol of everything they'd lost and remade. And something else changed, too. The silence around them cracked open.
Schools invited them to speak.
Young girls sent letters. One handwritten note read, "You gave me permission to be real." Elena cried when she read it. Daniela framed it. As summer turned into fall, they played more than ever. New compositions. Old ones rewritten. They traveled again, this time by invitation. No longer running.
Just sharing.
Their names appeared on programs beside phrases like revolutionary ensemble and audacious intimacy. Elena didn't flinch anymore when she saw the word love used publicly. She wore it like a second skin. And one night, in a small town by the sea, where the stage overlooked crashing waves and stars burned too close, Daniela stopped playing mid-song. Elena turned toward her, confused. Daniela stepped forward. "I have something to ask you," she said into the mic, voice steady. The crowd quieted. The sea stilled. Elena's heart stopped. Daniela reached into her coat and pulled out a velvet box. Opened it. Inside, a ring. Not flashy. Not gold. A thin band of black silver etched with 2 notes from the first piece they'd played together. "You don't have to say yes," Daniela said. "I just need you to know. I've never loved anyone this way. Not with my whole self. Not without fear." Elena stared at her. Time collapsed. And then she stepped forward, took the box from her hands, pulled the ring out, and slipped it onto her own finger. "Yes," she whispered. "But only if we promise to never stop playing." Daniela laughed, breathless. "We'll play until we can't stand. And then we'll sit and hum," Elena added. The crowd erupted. Some crying, some clapping. All of them witnessing something more powerful than tradition. Truth sung out loud. They kissed. Not just for the audience.
For them.
For the girl Elena used to be. For the woman Daniela had never stopped becoming. For all the people who were still hiding in silence, waiting for the music to give them permission to open their own doors. They moved in together officially a week later. Bought a new apartment. Bigger. Full of windows and light and bad wiring and endless potential. They painted the walls with their hands. Recorded an album between unpacking boxes. It was called The Echo We Chose to Follow. Critics called it raw and brave and necessary. But for Elena, it was just one thing. Hers. The interviews didn't scare her anymore. When asked what the music meant, she answered, "It means I finally stopped lying to survive." It means I found the melody that was always mine. Daniela, beside her, added, It means we don't run anymore. We play louder. They taught workshops, mentored kids, and in the quiet evenings, they sat by the window, wine in hand, bows resting, and just looked at each other like the beginning was always waiting in the eyes of the other. Elena didn't miss her old life. Not the silence. Not the comfort. Not the version of herself she'd buried beneath expectation. She missed only the time she'd lost pretending she didn't know how to feel this alive. 1 year after the fire, they returned to the fire stage for an anniversary concert. Same crowd. Bigger. Same tension. Stronger. This time, no violence. Just candles. And faces tilted upward in reverence. Elena stepped forward and spoke. This time last year, I stood here afraid. Afraid to be seen. Afraid to be hated. Afraid to be loved. Tonight, I'm only afraid of one thing. What if we had never met? Daniela took her hand. We did. And we changed everything. They played. A final piece.
New.
Unnamed. It didn't sound like war. Or fire. Or even pain. It sounded like wind through open doors. Like skin pressed to skin with nothing left to hide. It sounded like two women who loved each other. And never apologized. And when the last note faded into the night, Elena looked out into the crowd and whispered into the mic, We were told to play quietly. We didn't. The ovation was endless.